and welcome to Down with the Browns. And welcome back to another episode of Down with the Browns. I have the greatest rapper alive, a big-time Browns fan, a lawyer, and the man who wrote the song that is played before this podcast starts. Rock for My Browns by Mekka Don. How you doing, brother?
What's up, bro? How you doing?
Doing good. I'm glad you're on here with me today.
No doubt.
It's I saw on Twitter that you're dropping a new song soon, huh?
Yeah. I would say January 25th. It's a song called "Doing My Thing." It's another anthem, kind of inspirational. An anthem for people to just remind them, don't worry about the noise, block out the noise, keep doing your thing. I got a singer from Ohio on it named Antonio Lamar, who's really dope. And then super producer Mitch Mula, who's also from Ohio. He's produced for Juice WRLD and a whole bunch of huge artists. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and it's going to be available everywhere: Spotify, Tidal, SoundCloud, wherever, Apple, wherever you download music. So definitely check it out. Doing My Thing, January 25th.
Heck yeah, dude! I honestly, I love listening to your music, and I gotta say, every time the Browns play on Sundays, "Rock for My Browns" is bumping.
Love it. I love it.
And speaking of the Browns,
yeah,
we got to talk about all the noise that's going on.
Yeah, man.
With the quarterback situation. So, what's your thoughts on it?
Well, first, let me say this: it wouldn't be the Browns if there wasn't a ton of noise, right? I think that's just what we're used to.
Yeah,
I think the situation is somewhat complex, and I think, it's so polarizing because I think Baker himself is polarizing, right? And I think there's some people who root for him personally because they like what they feel like he personally represents, and I think there's some people that root against him personally because they don't like what they feel like he represents personally. Yeah. And I think sometimes that clouds people's judgment of what they see on the field. But at the same time, you also have to understand and respect the fact that people like the people that they root for generally, regardless of what they think about the situation. So I think where we are now, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different talk that you can have about whether or not he should have even been the quarterback that the Browns drafted. But we're kind of past that now. So now the question is, what do we do now, right? To me, I think that ultimately at the end of the day, the most important thing for a franchise, and you're talking about a sports franchise, is to win, right? I don't think necessarily winning at all costs and gutting your team and gutting the morale of your team for one championship is necessarily worth it. But I do think that at the end of the day, people have to remember that's what this is about. So ultimately, you want to have the best players on the field that you feel like give you the best chance to win. So that being said, I think with the type of season that Baker had, yes, he was injured. Yes, he probably shouldn't have played, all that other stuff. But I still think that it's prudent for Andrew Berry and management to kind of look and understand and evaluate the landscape of the market. But the reality is, unless Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or even Deshaun Watson, if his legal situation clears up, I mean, unless those guys are coming, Baker is probably going to be the most realistic option for, the 2022 season. And particularly because, they picked up his fifth-year option, $18 million cap hit, which isn't a crazy amount, but he is the most realistic option. So I think they still have to evaluate the landscape. And I think if Aaron Rodgers wants to come, then Aaron Rodgers has to come, man. This is people can't care about people's feelings and stuff like that. This isn't Pee-wee sports, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that there's a battle here because Baker is beloved by some people in Cleveland. He has been at least a part of what people consider some kind of a franchise turnaround in terms of kind of the energy and the morale. He's a guy that probably has some fans in the locker room. Probably not. I wouldn't say it's all, but I think he probably has some. And then there's also just the business side of things. So it's a to just say, oh, we're going to get rid of him next year is just, it's not really realistic considering all those different types of things. So I think, honestly, you know, we like I said, we have to trust in the management. And that's why I kind of said on Twitter, trust in the management that they're going to evaluate the landscape and figure out what's best. And then, you know, if he comes back next year, then, you know, we just got to, you know, as Browns fans, which is what we are first and foremost.
Yep.
You know, we're gonna root and hope for the best. And then if the best doesn't come, then we'll deal with it when that happens.
Yeah. I've got to say, that was probably the best answer I've heard to that question.
I mean, I think, you know, I try to be complete because I think people just are so, they're literally so like emotional about this stuff. And sometimes it just clouds their judgment. And I understand, man, especially as a Browns fan, it's emotional being a Browns fan because we want to win so bad. And, you know, we've been through so much. And, but I just think that there's, you know, there are a lot of layers to this thing. And I think sometimes people just have to take a step back, take a deep breath, right? And take a step back. But I also think, I guess one other thing I will add, though, is we do have to have, if Baker is going to come back and be the guy, and we're going to give him a mulligan basically for this last year and say, look, he was hurt. After he gets surgery, he's going to come back and he's going to play like he did the last 10 games of last year or whatever. We still need to be prepared for the future, right? Because if he doesn't come back with the vengeance, you know, that some people say he's going to come back with.
Yeah,
you're talking
like
about
Antonio.
Yeah, right. What are you going to do now? Because now you have a $40 million a year quarterback potentially that you have to pay if you want to keep him. And he may not have necessarily proven that. So you got to make sure you have, you know, I don't know if you get somebody, you know, get a good free agent. I know people throwing around Mariota, get a good backup, or if you just start preparing even in the draft and maybe mid rounds of the draft or whatever, but you got to have a backup because this game is unforgiving. And even, you know, imagine a guy like Alex Smith who's leading you to the playoffs and they still draft Mahomes. You know, it's not personal, man. This is business at the end of the day. If Tom Brady can be gotten rid of, if Peyton Manning can be gotten rid of, if Joe Montana has to go play for another team, if Brett Favre has to go play for another team, you know, when they still have at least a little bit left in the tank, then don't tell me that there's no quarterback that's off limits, right? You got to perform in this game. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, gotta say, again, that was probably the best answer possible.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and like you said, like it's more realistic to think Baker's coming back. The cap hit, I mean, as you said, it's not a lot, but I mean, it's still $19 million. And to move and get one of these other quarterbacks that a lot of people went, like to get Kirk Cousins, that's close to $40 million right there, and you don't know if this guy's going to be Kirk Cousins with Stefanski. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get. And the thing about Baker is you kind of know what you've got. You've seen him at a high and you've seen him at a low. So you can kind of judge that. And Baker's been here. It's something that we've not had is just the consistency at the quarterback position. That's something I really like. And if you don't have consistency, then you can't get a rhythm going. That's how I think. Like, if you can't go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one other thing, too, is, you know, we have to really run. If Baker is going to be the quarterback, we have to make sure we're building game plans that actually suit his abilities. You know, we got to bring in some more talent at wide receiver, and we got to run the ball more and more effectively, not just to say more, but more effectively. And, you know, we got to put him in the right spots. And that's the other thing about coaching. You know, if you look at even like the Steelers, for example, like Ben Roethlisberger and his evolution just as a quarterback, you know, there's the first championship that they won, Ben threw for like 100 and something yards. Same with Tom Brady. First championship they won, he threw for like 150 yards maybe. You know, they weren't the reason why they won the championship, but they weren't the reason why they lost either, right? So you have to understand what your quarterback's limitations are, what their strengths are, and that comes down to coaching and play calling and situational football. So that's the other thing too. I think that Baker gets a lot of the attention in these discussions, and rightfully so. But there are also other issues that have to be addressed as well in terms of, first of all, talent, excuse me, and then making sure that you're putting your guys in the right situations.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And One thing that I've kind of noticed is with Stefanski and Andrew Berry, where they're brand new to they're not brand new to the job, but they're still new to the jobs that they got. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing them progress. Like with the Odell situation, they're probably kicking themselves now. They're like, okay, we could have handled this a different way. Mm-hmm. They're going to grow from that. Like that's just how life is. You learn, you make mistakes, you learn from it, and then you grow. So I think that all these situations, like with the Baker injury, they're going to learn from that. Just moving forward, and Stefanski's play calling, he's going to learn that the plays didn't work, and he's going to probably just progress his offense and come up with new plays going into next year.
Yeah, I think one of the also other things that when we're talking about Baker, whether he should have played this year or not. I mean, it's a really tricky situation because if he is your franchise guy, first of all, Aaron Rodgers has been hurt almost all season. Mm-hmm. People can say, "Oh, it's just a toe injury." No, those toe injuries are serious. And there are games that he's visibly limping, right? And I'm not saying Baker's Aaron Rodgers, but my point is, if you are the franchise dude, can you imagine the coach coming to tell, Matt LaFleur coming to Aaron Rodgers and say, look, we're going to sit you down because we think you're hurt? Like, no, that's not how. If you're the franchise guy, you're medically cleared, and you're telling me you can go, then I'm going to let you go, And if you're showing me things in practice that make me think that you can get it done, I'm going to let you play, and especially if I think that you're our best option to play. So people saying, "Oh, blame Stefanski. They should have shut him down." That's not how this thing works. Yeah. So if Baker is your guy, and that's why for me, when just on that particular issue, I blame Baker substantially more than I blame Stefanski, because Baker. Listen, if you're going to play and you're going to play injured, then you got to perform, and if you're not performing, then you have to ultimately say, "Listen, I'm not at my best. Let me take a step back and go get surgery or do whatever it is that I need to do and give this team an opportunity to move without me playing injured. Otherwise, you're hurting the team and you're potentially hurting yourself." So I don't like the way that situation played out at all. I understand it because he's a competitor and he wants to win and he thinks he can overcome certain things. But I don't think you get to have it both ways, where you can play poorly and then go and say, well, look, I'm injured, and use that as an excuse. I just don't think you're allowed to have it both ways. That's not how this sport works. So I just wanted to address that too. But like you said, I think, that's the past now. We got to move forward. And hopefully learn from the things that have happened and not make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, and one thing that this is just personally, I don't know if you think the same way or if it's even a rational thought, but the way I look at it is Baker, he's always had this ego, and I think that his ego kind of got in the way of him playing this year, and he's like, okay, it don't matter that I'm hurt, I'm the guy, I'm gonna go here and throw for 500 yards and 20 touchdowns. He even said it in one of the press conferences. He's like, I decide whether I play or don't play.
Which is generally true for franchise quarterbacks. Like, I mean, lots of people are playing hurt every week. And I'm not saying that his injury is the same as everybody else's injury. I understand all injuries are different. But a lot of the guys are playing hurt. And if you are the franchise quarterback, then generally you do get to decide whether you're playing or not, unless you're not medically cleared. So I do think his ego got in the way. I do think his pride and, maybe the positive side of him, the toughness and, trying to, gut it out, got in the way a little bit. But like you said, I think ultimately, let's not cry over spilled milk. That the season is over, but hopefully that we can trust our management and our players, right, to learn and move forward and be better next year. Because what we don't want is, okay, we gave you, an excuse for this last year, not just Baker but the team, and then we come back and we see a similar type of performance next year. Because this division is only getting tougher now. I mean, Cincinnati's for real. Yeah, we beat them twice. I get it, but they're for real, right? And the Lamar is always going to be a problem, and especially when they were unhealthy pretty much for a lot of the season. I know we had injuries too, but they're going to get a lot of guys back, and they're going to be a problem too. So this isn't a division you can mess around in.
Yeah, the AFC North is just notorious for being one of the best divisions in football. I mean, going back for years and decades, and it's just it's weird that we've never won one like since we got into the AFC North, and there for a while we were number one, and then it just slipped away and it hurt.
Right.
But hopefully they use that pain from this year. They're all like, okay, we're at our low.
Right.
And we're going to go into this next season, and we're going to win the whole effing thing. Like, one of them.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And,
so, I hope that if Baker comes back, I hope that he comes back and he plays well. And and he proves that, that last year was a fluke of some sort and that he really is progressing and all that other stuff. I hope that that's true. Like, I'm not a person that's sitting there and saying that I want him to come back and fail, right? Am I a big fan of him personally? Not really, But if he's the quarterback of the Browns, then I'm gonna root for him. You know what I mean? I'm gonna root for them to win, and so that's my personal feelings about him don't really matter. They're not gonna influence my support of the team or anything like that. But I hope that he does come back and proves me wrong. I don't necessarily think he's elite. I never thought he was elite, especially at the NFL level. But I also recognize that you don't necessarily need to be elite to win football games in the NFL. But if you're not elite, then you have to have a lot of other things going right, So a lot of the recent quarterbacks who won championships are elite. It's very rare when you have somebody win a Super Bowl and the quarterback's not elite. It happens, but it's very rare. Yeah,
such as like a Nick Foles with the Eagles a couple years ago.
Right.
And the one thing that I noticed about that team was like they all played together. They all had one mind, one accord. And that, like you heard like JOK and Newsom, they were talking about that. They're like, or not Newsom, JJ3. And they were talking about how they wanted to bond. They needed to get the defense and offense to bond more and have like a brotherhood.
Definitely.
And that's one thing I think that the team needs to work on going into next season is getting that bond, getting all on one mind, one accord, and going to next season. And
definitely.
Yeah, and speaking of going into next season, one position, as you said earlier, that we got to upgrade in is receiver. So on the current roster, which receivers do you think will come back for next season?
Wow. Well, obviously, Peoples-Jones, Landry. I think Landry will be back.
You think he's back? Do you think he restructures?
Yeah, I think he might restructure because he doesn't have a tremendous amount of value in the open market, right? I mean, he has some value. Obviously, he's still good, but it's not like the value he had, 4 years ago when he was he's going crazy. So I think it makes sense. I think he actually likes being there. I think he likes being in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I think there's a great role for him. And then the young guys, I mean, I guess there's no reason for them not to at least be in camp, and see what happens. But I think that they're going to have to go into the draft and grab someone, whether it's Drake London out of USC, Garrett Wilson. I'm not sure if he'll even be there when we pick, but they're going to have to go and get somebody, we need some more playmakers on the outside and guys that we can trust. So it'll be interesting. I haven't looked deep. I haven't done like a full deep dive into that part of things yet, like which receivers will be there. Yeah. I think part of it just determines what happens in the draft and what happens in free agency. So it's a little too early for me to answer that. But I do think that Jarvis will be back. And part of the reason why you bring someone like Jarvis back, especially if he's willing to restructure, is because he is the heart and soul in a lot of ways of that team. He's a guy that is a leader. He's a proven guy in this league, right? He's not a guy that just talking out of his butt. Like he's done it. Yeah. And he also knows how to galvanize the team. So I expect to see him back.
Yeah, I hope so. I really love Juice. He's honestly probably one of my favorite Browns aside from Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb.
Right.
And just the way, even going back to Hard Knocks, I remember watching him and you could just tell he was a leader. And you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's actually in Cleveland, coming off that 0-16 season. You're like, oh my gosh, things are going to change. And it was kind of a shock to me, actually, just to see somebody that good on the Browns offensively. And,
Right.
And one thing I do know is him and Baker, they do have a connection, like down the field and on the field. Like a lot of people say him and Higgins have that connection, which they do. They do have a good connection. But I think that him and Baker, Juice and Baker, I think theirs is better. Because, I mean,
it's more consistent.
Yeah.
There were some drops and stuff. And, it's just this season was just weird in a lot of ways, too. I mean, there were a lot of, obviously COVID and Browns weren't the only ones dealing with that. So I don't want to use that as an excuse. But COVID being out, guys being injured in and out of the lineup, just trying to find a rhythm was hard this year for the Browns. It was just really hard. So, I don't, like I said, I don't want to just chalk it up and act like, okay, it didn't exist. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that there's still a lot of pieces in place that can be valuable to a winning team. So I'm hopeful still, just as we are as Browns fans,
Yeah, it feels like we're only like a piece or two away. The defense is solid. Like that defense down the stretch, when you needed them to be there, they were there.
Yep.
It honestly played like a Super Bowl caliber defense.
If you bring Clowney back, and you got Miles, and you got Joke and a linebacker situation, and then our secondary, which is going to be one of the best. I mean, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go. I'll take that. I'll take that team in the battle any day. So
yeah. I think that you get some solid D tackles. Like, you don't even have to go get big names. You just get some like solid veterans in there that can do their job. And I think you've got probably top 3, top 5 defense. I mean,
Definitely.
if you just re-sign pretty much everybody and bring them all back, which I don't know if we'll bring back Ronnie Harrison. That was kind of iffy, but I mean, bring them back. It don't matter. Let's run it back defensive wise.
Right.
But like it felt like the first part of the season, it was the offense doing well, and then the defense wasn't. And then for the second part of the season, it was like, okay, the defense they found their groove, and the offense started to decline.
Right.
And
right. Exactly.
So I think that's just something they can all grow on. I think Stefanski's going to go into his lair and figure out what's up. He's going to get back in the drawing board. He's going to figure out he's going to rejuvenate himself, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you need a season like this where you have disappointment and to really, really make sure you take a step back and look internally and see, okay, what could I have done better? What do I need to do better? Because sometimes when you have success, when you win, it's just like in if you're playing blackjack or something and you hit on 17, which you're never supposed to, the dealer has a 7 showing and you hit on 17 and, and you get a 4 and you win. It's like, all right, you won. Yeah. And you're celebrating, but did you do the right thing? And sometimes when you win, it masks a lot of the issues that you may have had. Yeah, and that you don't necessarily feel like you need to address. And when you lose, sometimes it's a blessing because it forces you to really examine everything. So I expect that to happen in the offseason. Like
as Hugh Jackson used to say, I believe it was Hugh Jackson, you had wins and lessons. Or no, it's Tyronn Lue.
Right. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
He said, wins and lessons. You don't have losses.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think going into next year, like I'm hopeful. I know a lot of people are still downing on the Browns, but I'm actually hopeful for this team. Like as they showed, like down the stretch, defense rocking, and you get some new receivers in here, get Baker some new toys, and you just go out there and ball.
Yeah, I'm hopeful as from a Browns fan perspective, as I always am. Like it didn't matter who the team was, I'm always hopeful. Yeah. But I'm also realistic that, I'm not going to be, like if you're, and this is just the reality, I'm just being honest, right? Like when you're talking about, if you're the Packers, if you are, obviously Tampa Bay Bucks now, if you're Buffalo Bills, you're coming in with elite quarterback play. There's a difference between how you feel going into the season versus when you're coming in with a quarterback that you're not really sure about. So for me, who's a guy who's not really sure, there are some people who feel like they're really sure. So their perspective might be different. But for me, I'm just kind of just like, we'll see. I'm going to support. I'm going to I'm gonna rally, but I'm not sold yet. And again, it doesn't matter if I am or not. That's not really, I don't determine anything, but I'm not sold, on Baker and his ability to lead this team to a Super Bowl, which is ultimately what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we care if we go to playoffs and lose in the first round. Like that's not what we hope for anymore, right?
Yeah.
But we'll see. And I'm not going to be the guy that's going to be, just banging on him at all off season. And there's some people on Twitter that are just can't get over that, like can't get over themselves and just feel like they need to. I'm not doing that. But if someone asks me about my opinion, I'm gonna give them my honest answer.
Yeah, and it feels like on Twitter, like you've got it's like a hard left and a hard right. Like people are like, Baker Mayfield's the greatest quarterback of all time. He can do no wrong. And then you've got people that absolutely hate the man. And
I feel like there's not a lot of balance, and that's true on Twitter and a lot of topics. There's just not a lot of balance. But Baker is a polarizing guy. He is, personality wise, not even just football, and football wise too. Because like I said, and I said this on Twitter, and he's a very frustrating player to root for, because sometimes you watch him and he's like Brett Favre Jr. He's like doing things that you're like, this is one of the greatest dudes I've ever seen play. Yeah. And then another time you watch him and you're like, what are you even possibly thinking? I'm not even talking about the throw. I'm talking about the decision. Yeah. There were 7 guys there. You know what I mean? And so it's very frustrating to watch him sometimes as a fan, because he's polarizing even as play. And then as personality-wise, he's also polarizing. Because some people love that, what they feel like he represents, that underdog who always has, a chip on his shoulder because he was never really highly touted. But just if he's given the opportunity, he can do it. He can grind it out, and he has heart and toughness, and that represents the city in some ways and stuff like that. And then there are other people that don't like it. They think he's smug and arrogant and cocky and just entitled and all these other things. You know what I mean? So he's just a polarizing dude, and I think he's always going to be that, whether he's on the Browns or he's not on the Browns. And so that's just something that I think is just going to continue happening with Baker. It's the same thing in a different way with Odell Beckham. Right, he's a polarizing dude too. There are people who, on the field and off the field, there's some people that say, "Oh, he's amazing on the field." Some people say he sucks. He's just a front runner. He can only make amazing one-handed catches, but he's not clutch. And then personality-wise, same thing. So that's just part of the game now. And especially with social media and just everybody having a voice, and every single clip that an interview and every single thing you ever do being posted. That's just part of what you have to accept, so we shall see. Yeah, and it's got to be rough on these newer quarterbacks, like going into the social media era. Like people like Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, and all them, they didn't really have to deal with this. Like people like, there was reports of Baker and his wife getting death threats. Right. They may have got them, but it's social media is just, you're like one click away from everybody now. Right. And like I could literally message Baker Mayfield right now if I wanted to, instead of just looking through a TV screen and like hoping one day I might be able to see him in person. Right. Something like that. And I think a lot of people take the humanity out of football. Like these people are flesh and blood just like us. Like, and that's a good segue to kind of the Malik McDowell thing. Yeah, which I know we were going to talk about, but that's I just feel like it's a good segue, because I've seen a lot of the posts on social media and people laughing and railing on him, and that's everybody's right. Everybody's right to do whatever it is that they want to do. My approach is just always substantially different. When I see something like that, especially something like that, this isn't like a domestic violence situation or a sexual abuse situation or something like that. This is a guy who. Clearly anybody in their right mind would not want to behave this way, and there are people who are referencing a hit that he took years ago that they think may have changed them, and just the mental health kind of component of this thing as well. I feel like you're 100% right. A lot of people don't treat these athletes like human beings, and they just treat them like objects that are supposed to perform to their desires, and that's the only use that they have for them. Yeah, they treat them like video games, like you can control everything they do. Yeah,
like Malik McDowell, he obviously needs help, and I really hope he gets that help that he needs because he's obviously dealing with some stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And it was really awesome to see him out there for the Browns this year. Like, I mean, it looked like he had turned around his life and he was giving it all to football. Because, I mean, he played really well for us this year.
Yeah.
And
you never know what they're dealing with, you know. And it's true of music sometimes too. Some of the people who are the most disturbed, you know, internally still, that doesn't mean they can't perform, but they're ultimately still disturbed, you know, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I see that the videos like that and stories like that, and my first instinct is, wow, this is sad, and I hope that, you know, he gets the help that he needs, and you know, and he gets diagnosed correctly too, because one of the things that, you know, we were talking about, we had a conversation about this on social media, and not just me, but many people, and just talking about what is, you know, how do you even diagnose some of these issues? Is it CTE that he has? Is it some other mental health disorder? I mean, obviously, there are professionals that do that. And so for me, it's you know, people don't take mental health issues as seriously, partially because they don't know how to necessarily diagnose. Whereas any other traditional quote unquote handicap, you know, someone's in a wheelchair or someone's paralyzed or whatever, you can see it, so you can physically see it, so you can assess what it is. But the mental ones, it's hard to tell. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, people are functioning well, but that doesn't mean that they're not dealing with stuff. So anyway, you know, just, you know, prayers up for him and you know, his family and everyone else who, you know, kind of has to deal with that situation, and, you know, hopefully it turns out okay.
Yeah, I hope he does get the help he needs, and I mean, he's a phenomenal football player. I'd love to see him back, and I really hope the Browns do try to help him. Like, that'd be a class act for them to help him out. Yeah, they can.
Right.
But just moving forward, like, speaking of, we're both Browns fans, and we've seen the ups and the downs, and so, like, what are, like, just some of your favorite moments as a Browns fan? Like, what are some of your, like, just looking back and you're like, man, that was awesome?
You know, I mean, there are a few that stick out. I mean, you know, it's funny. So when I was having I was on the Pilot Boys podcast before, and we had Eric Metcalf on there, and just we relived some of his moments and some of his returns and some of those plays, and talked about some of the things, you know, Webster Slaughter and he used to do. And then, but honestly, it's crazy. I mean, as recent as last year, man, you go into the playoffs and you beat the Steelers, bro, like, it doesn't get better than that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I have lots of moments that I like, but that one is so significant. I mean, obviously it's so recent, so maybe that's why. But when you look at just like the history, right, of the Browns, and even the recent history, and then obviously just the terror that the Steelers have been for us with Big Ben and Tomlin, and even before Tomlin, you know, that's so significant. That was a very significant win, you know what I mean, and just in Browns history, and it gave us hope that, like, okay, we're here, we're ready to go, you know.
Super Bowl,
and then we had a shot to beat Kansas City, like, you know. So it's just, you know, it's I don't know. Maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment in some ways, but I just feel like that's the one that just automatically sticks out right now.
That,
you know?
Honestly, that was the coolest moment since I've been a Browns fan. I mean, I'm just 22, and the Browns, since I've watched them since I was younger, like, that we've really not done anything. We've been to the playoffs twice since I've watched.
I mean, it's hard. Like, there's not so many moments. I mean, there are amazing games I remember watching when I was a kid, and obviously even looking back at Jim Brown highlights. But I mean, I wasn't alive during that time, you know, like watching that stuff. So a lot of it, you know, a lot of our great moments were like when I was either really young, like in the 80s, or, you know, before that, you know. And then we had a run a couple years ago too. I can't remember, but we ran off like a bunch of games in a row, you know.
2014?
Yeah, 24, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was tweeting about that secondary earlier today. And looking back, that secondary was pretty nasty. I mean, you had prime Joe Hayden, Dante Hittner, Taj Gibson.
Yeah, that secondary was nasty. Yeah, so those are some of the moments, and looking forward now, it's interesting because if you ask, there are certain franchises, and this is, I know I'm a Buckeyes fan. I know you're a Kentucky football fan, and but like if you ask me my favorite Ohio State moments, I don't even know if I can answer. There's so many, right? And I'm not saying that to rub it in. I'm just saying franchise that we're a program that's had a ton of success. If you ask a Steelers fan, same thing. Ask them their favorite moments. They probably got a trillion. And so my point in bringing that up is that I want us to get to that point where 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now, when someone asks us this same question, we could look back and say, bro, there's so many. You know what I mean? Like that's where I hope this franchise is headed. So
it'd be kind of cool to be like the Browns turn into like the next Patriots, like with Tom Brady, and because nobody really remembers the Patriots before Tom Brady. I mean, you hear the stories about Drew Bledsoe and then going transitioning into Tom Brady, but they weren't really the historic franchise they are now. Like, I mean, I really don't know much about them because Tom Brady's been in the league for 500 years.
If you ask a lot of people who watch football now, and then you ask them to name dominant franchises, they're going to name the Patriots. They're not going to name the Bears, right? They're not going to name the Dolphins, and those are teams that had a lot of success back in the day, or even the Redskins, and like the Cowboys, for example. Cowboys. I mean, there was a time when if you asked somebody in the late '90s to name one of the most dominant franchises, there's no one that wasn't going to say the Cowboys. Steelers have always been there, but I just want us to get on that level because I feel like from a football town and fan standpoint, it's really deserved. I mean, we pour our all into that franchise, even if we win one game or we win 0 games, right? We're still there, and also Ohio knows football, man. Ohio's not some random state when it comes to football. It's legit, and we produce some of the top talent year after year. And I know it doesn't always correlate to the NFL, but like we produce some of the top talent year after year from little league to high school to college. So why can't we just get it going up there, man, and the pros but I do love the talent that we have on this team. We've gotten a lot of picks right. We've gotten a lot of free agent moves right. Yeah. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. But we do have to get that quarterback situation is going to have to really, really reveal itself properly next year. And I think
oh, my bad. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, or we might end up being in rebuild mode again, because, guys are, we have the talent that we need now. We need a few more pieces, and we need a great quarterback play, above average quarterback play to really make a run.
Yeah, and I think if Jimmy Haslam will just continue to let AB and Stefanski do their jobs, I don't think they should fire if Baker doesn't do well this year and the next year is kind of repeated this year. I don't think that they should let go of Stefanski and AB. I mean, Stefanski's proved that he's a good coach. I mean, coach of the year last year.
Right.
AB's a phenomenal GM. I don't think he's missed in the top 4 rounds yet.
Right.
I mean, he's addressed pretty much every hole we've needed since he's been the GM. And I think moving forward, we're in great hands.
Yeah.
But if Baker doesn't work out, if whoever you bring in as your backup has to take over midseason and you got to play them the rest of the year, I think you're in a good shape, though, going into next year because the draft class is so good. It's not like you're going into a dud draft class for quarterbacks because, I mean, you got C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams,
Bryce
Young,
you got more guys. It just depends on where you are in the draft because, I mean, what's most unlikely – we're not gonna win 3 games next year, So I mean, even if we have a not great season, we'll probably be middle of the pack again. Which means that if we want to get one of those quarterbacks, we would have to make a move. So it's not impossible, but it's and then you're still in rebuild mode, right? Because they're still rookies, right? They're talented, but they're rookies, and the rest of your guys are not rookies. You know what I mean? Like your talent is ready to go now, and so then you're gonna start dealing with a lot of free agent stuff and. So it's just, I mean, ideally, we'll see. But ideally,
you want Baker to be the guy. You want him to come out next year.
Honestly, what I want is Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? That's what I want. You know what I mean? I want. If the Deshaun Watson, I know the situation sounds too bleak for it to not be real. So
yeah,
I don't like to support that type of thing. But if for some reason it turns out that he's able to get that cleared up, and I don't know. It's just maybe it was overblown or it was a conspiracy. I don't know. It's just whatever. Then I would love to have him too. You know what I mean? Like I want best talent at that position.
Yeah.
If those don't work out, I'm not really a big fan of Kirk Cousins. I'm not really a big fan of Derek Carr. I don't think that those guys are huge upgrades over Baker personally. I don't. I just don't think so.
Listen, if the Browns can get on the Russell Wilson train, I'm all for it. That's one of my favorite quarterbacks.
I love Russell Wilson. I know he didn't have a great season. And I know people are going to say whatever they're going to say. They'd rather have Baker than Russ. But I'm like, listen, man, Russ has proven it in this league.
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, time and time again. So, that's what I want. But if that's not going to happen, and it doesn't make sense, to pursue those guys for whatever reasons, or it's not going to work out, then let's put Baker in the best situation to succeed next year, because we're in a win now. We're in a win now situation,
Well, and you still got like Myles Garrett, who's still young. You've got Denzel Ward, who's still young. Nick Chubb's still young. You've got all these really young, phenomenal players on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't want to waste their primes. Like Myles Garrett, phenomenal, like arguably going to be one of the best defensive players the Browns have ever had. But he's not going to play like this the rest of his career.
But some of these guys are going to have to get big deals like Ward and Chubb, and or else they're going to move on. And once you start paying people, a bunch of money, it leaves other, you when you got a young team, and that was the reason why the Seahawks were able to build such a great team around West, especially the defense, because he was on $300,000 a year deal. You know what I mean? Like, same thing that happened with Baltimore back in the day with Joe Flacco. Once you pay these guys, your quarterback play has to be exceptional to make up for a lot of deficiencies, because there's just not enough money to go around, and that's what Aaron Rodgers has done for years. That's what Tom Brady did that, and then restructured contracts and stuff like that, and but they GM'd their way into a lot of great situations. And that's the same thing Russell was in for a little bit too. So I mean, that's another thing that has to be considered too, is guys are going to have to start getting aren't going to be on rookie deals for much longer, and so you really got to just maximize the most that you can when you have young guys who aren't on crazy deals. And so we'll see. We'll see, man.
Yeah, hopefully we do get Denzel Ward paid and Jadeveon Clowney. Really like to see them come back, and David Njoku. Can't forget about him.
Right. Exactly.
But like, I don't want I'm glad AB did not sign Baker to that extension before the season. Like a lot of people, like even myself, like I was like, it might be smarter to sign him now in case he does go off this year. Because all the signs pointed, you saw the progression toward the end of the year last year, and you're like, okay, yeah, this he's kind of good. He might be the best we've seen in a while, and then he just picks up the 5th-year option. You're like, okay, this could be good, this could be bad, you never know. And then really smart part on him, like to wait it out. You'd rather know he's your guy and give him the bag than be in an Eagles Carson Wentz situation. I think it's going to be a tough situation, because I don't think Baker is going to overwhelm next year or underwhelm. Right, I think he's going to be, and when you look at the landscape of quarterback play, there's not a ton of great quarterback play all the time that's that consistent, right? You have guys that are good, like if the middle of the road kind of 10 to 15 range type guys, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, maybe even Dak is probably in that area. Those guys are. Are you going to break your franchise for those guys? Not really. You know what I mean? So it's like, after you get to outside of Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe even Justin Herbert has creeped his way up in there. Mhm.
You got Joe Burrow, Lamar, there's young guys. I mean, you have like 6 or 7 guys that you would say, okay, I'll go to war with these guys under any circumstance,
Mhm.
and then you have a bunch of guys that are, pretty good. So I think that's what's gonna. Everybody wants to get the elite, but it's just everyone can't have the elite. They're not 30 elite quarterbacks in the world. There aren't, So half of the teams are going to be with guys that are just not that good, and then a quarter of those teams are going to be with guys that are above average, and then you have about a quarter of the teams that have elite quarterbacks, and that's just the way the NFL always is and has always been. So that's another thing people have to just remember when they're making their analysis. Sometimes it's better to have a Derek Carr than it is to keep rebuilding every year, and then try to just formulate that team around that guy to put him in the best situation to succeed. So there's a lot to it, man. It's not just about it's not just about wins and losses, and it's not just about having great performance every game. That's just not realistic.
Yeah, and one thing about it kind of weirds me out on Twitter. It was, like you said earlier, you saw a lot of people like rooting against Baker. Like at the end of the day, you're not rooting for Baker. You're rooting for the Cleveland Browns. Like the dog pound is who you're representing. And
so I think and I think there's some the way that I think some people probably would like that to be explained if they could articulate it better. Is like, listen, I'm not rooting. It's not that I'm rooting against Baker. It's just that I don't want him to be our quarterback anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think he's the guy. I don't like rooting for him because I don't think he's the guy. I don't like watching this team with him as the guy. I want management to do something else. So yes, I don't want him here anymore. Right. So I think that's a different thing than saying I'm just rooting for him to fail because I don't like the guy. Right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't articulate that part well. I think it's like, no, I don't want him to be the quarterback anymore. This is my team. I've invested in this team for a long time. I've evaluated over a number of years, not just this year. And he's shown some flashes of greatness, but I don't think that he's the guy, and I don't want him to be the quarterback anymore. So I'm upset, and I'm going to tell you that I'm upset every chance I get. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. Right. As to have that opinion, and as a fan, right, you're entitled to have that opinion. And then I think there's some people that just don't like him, right? There aren't even necessarily Browns fans. They're just like, F that guy. And they just like, they want to see him fail because they don't want to see someone like him have any level of success. And so there's definitely that too. So it's nuanced. Like I said, there's some people, and even some people that root for him, they don't even necessarily care. Somebody said on Twitter, and he got a lot of interaction, some people ridiculed him, but I think some people kind of do agree. They said, I'd rather lose with Baker than win with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. That just like it hurt my brain, honestly. Like the point of playing the game is to win. But
for some people it's not. For some people it's not, and that's the thing that makes this thing so complex. Is for some people it really isn't. It is. I would rather see this guy who I love, and who I support, and who I believe represents me and my personality, and I'd rather watch him than watch some guy who's better than him that I don't like, right? It's kind of like, and that's like kind of the nuance of fanhood. It's not always about winning for some people, so that's the thing, and that's what kind of makes the conversation just keep going, and it's going to keep going forever. This conversation is going to be going next year too. When he has a good game, it's going to be crazy. If he has a bad game, it's going to be crazy. It's just how it's going to be, and it's just. Yeah.
One thing I've noticed is he has a really large Sooners fan base in Cleveland now.
Yeah.
And I've even had podcasts with people that were Sooner Browns fans, and they've kind of flaked on the Browns, but because of all the Baker hate. But I don't care who's the quarterback. If you want to throw Nick Mullins out there, if he's winning you games, let's ride. I was down with Deshaun Kaiser if he was going to prove himself.
So the reason why I think why I care and why some people care, and I think I know what you mean, but I think ultimately the question is what is out of all the available options and situations, what's the best? What do you feel like from a football evaluation standpoint is the best option for the team? That's really what we're trying to figure out, right? And And that's what we hope the management is going to figure out. So that's why I said on Twitter, I said, listen, if Baker's the quarterback next year, I'm still going to root for him and the Browns. Yeah. I said that even though I don't necessarily believe in him, I still believe that, right? Because the reason why I believe that is because I believe in the management that we have, right? I believe in Andrew Berry. I believe that they're going to exhaust all options to figure out what the best scenario is for us. And if he ends up being the guy, then I feel like they determined that was the best scenario, and I'm going to ride with them with that. Now, and this is another part of the nuance. If I didn't believe in the management, which there's certain lots of franchises now, and even ours at different points in times where you didn't believe in the management, then that's a much harder pill to swallow, because then you could say, well, I'm not even sure they did everything else, or they were evaluating talent correctly, or they were doing everything they could to evaluate the landscape and make the right deals and stuff like that. Now, if you feel that way, then it's a lot harder to support someone that you don't believe is the best option, you know? So anyway, it's a lot, and sometimes I think we make it more than it has to be. Yeah. But that's part of what being a fan is, you know.
But yeah, you know, there's so much talk on Baker Mayfield. We've talked about him quite a bit, but right now it's a hot topic since the season just ended. But I don't feel like Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb and Denzel Ward get enough love.
Yeah.
Like
those
I said
guys
earlier,
are studs, man, and they perform at high levels, and they've there's some people that have negative things to say about Myles sometimes, or even Denzel Ward sometimes, and it's just kind of these guys are some of the best guys at their position.
Yeah, they hold franchise records. Like Nick Chubb has the longest rush. Myles is now the season sack leader and close to being the franchise sack leader.
Yeah, I would say Nick Chubb and Myles, they get a lot of love. I see them get a ton. But I think what you're saying more so is just sometimes the focus doesn't really get to go on those guys because there's so much talk about everything else, and which I think is right. So again, I think one thing about the offseason that's great is it does give you a second to recalibrate. You can go back and watch film. You can go back and, look at schemes. You can, follow what's happening in free agency and in the draft, and, how guys are doing in the off season with recoveries. And it just gives you it just gives you a space to breathe for a second. And I think for a lot of us, we just need to do that. Sometimes it will help you see things a lot clearer when you're in the thick of things and you're really hoping for something to happen and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you overreact. Sometimes you underreact, but sometimes you overreact too. So, but when you look back at the roster and you say, wow, this roster still has Nick Chubb. This roster still has Denzel Ward. It still has Myles Garrett. It still has Kareem Hunt. I'm like, you're like, all right, it still has our offensive line. Like, okay, let's go, so.
Yeah, if we can get back a healthy Jack Conklin, we easily got a top 3 line. Comes back. And
absolutely.
Also, that is something that the Browns need to address, too, is some depth.
And definitely.
And I know you saw my agenda on Twitter about the Browns getting Darian Kennard out of Kentucky. I know it's a little biased, but
no, I don't. Honestly, I don't. Just to be honest, I haven't got into I don't do a ton of draft prep, by the way, but I haven't gotten into that yet. And I didn't see a ton of Kentucky play, but I take your word for it, man. I know you're a Kentucky guy, but I know you're also a guy who evaluates football. So I don't just look at someone who says something about their team and just says, they're just saying it because they're a Hummer, So yeah, I'm down. You're down, I'm down.
Hey, listen, buddy. I'm down to draft some Buckeyes. Y'all always produce. Y'all are now wide receiver 1 or wide receiver U, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely wide receiver U right now.
Yeah, you guys got some studs.
Yeah, sure. I would love, man. I would be so disappointed if we don't end up with any. If we don't end up with Olave or Wilson. I understand that Olave should definitely be available, but Wilson probably won't be.
Yeah, I think Wilson will be gone after the Falcons. He'll be gone by the Falcons. Yeah. If he's
the Falcons kind of have to take if he's there, they kind of have to take him.
Yeah,
especially with what happened with Calvin Ridley, they can't not take him. They need to have a stud. receiver. And if Calvin really comes back and he's, good, then that's even a bonus to them. So we'll see. Yeah, later in more towards like February and March after free agency kicks off, and that's when I start to kind of pay more attention to the draft and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm just really hyped. I don't know why. I'm already ready for next season, man.
Yeah, no, I know how you feel, man. I am too. I'm interested in seeing how things shake out, though. I think that that's part of the thing that I've learned to enjoy. Obviously I enjoy. There's nothing I enjoy more than the season. Yeah. But I've also learned to enjoy the offseason and watching how things develop and, hearing stories about, this surprise guy in camp, like Demetric Felton. You know what I mean? I love that type of stuff. You know what I mean? So I love to kind of just watch and let the offseason develop, particularly when I believe in the management or, or I believe in the coach. Yeah. It sucks when you don't believe in them. Right, because then it's just like you're just like, all right, what are they going to mess up this time? But when you believe in them, it's a lot easier thing to follow. Yeah,
it's good when we got that stability finally, because usually after a season, it feels like such a letdown this year, even though we won 8 games. The Browns went 8-9. A couple years ago, we were dreaming for that stuff. I'm not being one of them Browns fans. It's like, oh, look at us now, but just putting that into perspective, but we got that stability in the front office and in the coaching staff. Because usually after a letdown season, they were cleaning house and you didn't know who was coming in. Everybody had the plane trackers, figuring out who was coming to Cleveland, who was leaving.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's different now. It's different. We expect to win now, so. Yeah, I don't care about us going 0-16. Those days are over. We expect to win. So
not the same old Browns. And so before we end this podcast, I just want to get one hot take for next season.
Okay, I will say, and maybe this isn't too hot of a take, considering that he was already up there, but I think Nick Chubb is going to lead the league in rushing next year. Oh. And the reason why I think that, obviously, besides the obvious talent and the fact that he's already up there, is I really do think that we're going to refocus our game plan around getting him the ball as much as possible. I think that is, if you talk, Eric Metcalf, like I said, I told you, we talked to him before on a podcast. This was 2 years ago. He's like, listen, that is our best chance to win. Get Nick Chubb the ball, Yeah. So I think that ultimately, when they review the season, they review Baker's play, right? Which you can say, okay, he's hurt. But you're still going to have to understand, that was still him, right? So he's going to have to work his way up back into your trust. I think we're going to start off the season just mauling people,
That's what we love to hear.
Yeah. So that's, again, I don't know if it's a hot take, right? Because Nick Chubb is already one of the greatest running backs in the league, regardless. Yeah. But I think when you got guys like Derrick Henry that were rushing for what they're rushing for, and a lot of other healthy Jonathan Taylor and Dalvin Cook and all these guys, I mean, he has competition for that. So yeah, but I think it's going to happen.
So my hot take is kind of similar to that. Yeah, but it's the Browns are going to have 2,000-yard rushers.
Is it going to be Dearness or is it going to be Kareem?
Oh, it's going to be Kareem. Kareem's going to come out. He's going to come at the door, and he's going to be fired up. Because I know that man missed playing for the Browns most of this season, and he's going to be lit for next year.
Right, yeah. I hope so, man. If he's healthy, people forget, when you lose talent like that, losing Odell, losing Kareem for most of the season, I mean, come on, man. Those guys are Hall of Fame talent. You know what I'm saying? We're not just talking about just some key pieces on offense. We're talking about Hall of Fame talent type players. That's hard to replace. So I agree with you. I think that was an underrated storyline from the season too, was losing Kareem.
Yeah, I've said that numerous times as well. And as you said, a lot of people forget how good Kareem Hunt is just because he's behind Nick Chubb, and I think that just shows how good Nick Chubb is.
Right. Yes.
because, I mean, Kareem led the league in rushing with the Chiefs. And then when the Chiefs lost him, they were like, a lot of Chiefs fans kind of panicked. They're like, oh, my gosh, what are we going to do?
Yeah. And honestly, their rushing game recently it's been kind of underwhelming, you know? Yeah. So, you know, Kareem would start on probably 20 teams in the league. He'd probably be the starting running back. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So I love it. I'm excited.
Yeah, and the Browns got to retain Stoop Mitchell. They got to keep him at all cost.
Stump.
Yeah. Stump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stump.
Yeah. Yeah, they got to. He's the whisperer, man. They love that dude too. So
yeah, like, I mean, that whole running back core is nasty.
Mm-hmm. All of them.
Anybody can go out for 100, honestly.
Right, and especially with the offensive line too. So they're back healthy and we're good to go.
Well, buddy, I really appreciate you hopping on. It was an honor to do this with you today.
No problem, man. I love your content, man, and your energy. You know, I've followed on social media. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those guys that just acts like they're so cool on social media. You know what I mean? Like, I like to interact with people, with real people, and, you know, just getting to know you from social media. I just think you have great energy. You have good perspective. Obviously your content and your videos are dope, and you helped me do one, which is dope. And so I appreciate that. And, you know, keep going, man. Like I said, I support you. I love the fact that you're doing this and trying to bring some positive kind of conversation to this thing. Sometimes it just feels like everybody's just out here just spewing negativity, and it's hard to listen to, honestly. So keep going, man. I know how hard it is, but you have what it takes, man. So keep going.
Appreciate that, man. We'll get you on again. I'll have to get you back on.
No problem.
All right, see you.
All right, take care.
You too.
We coming, we taking the go. Ready for y'all, ready to ball. Not on my team, we gon' get along. Orange and brown, running the town. The MC champs, I'm loving the sound. Ready for steel, ready to rave. Ready for fall, ready to bang. See us, we coming, we styling, we locking, we passing, we running, we touching it down. Cleveland the city, we good, we did it. We been through the gritty, we loving the Browns. Never will chill, never will lounge. We are the dogs, we are the hounds. Never the fans, we blew and we bleeding. So get on your feet, cause we are the Browns.